In today's video, we're going to go through my 2025 reading journal. It is essentially the first year where I have filled out my reading journal every single day, or at least caught up with every single day worth of reading stats. So I guess let's just get into it. Okay, so today we're going to go through my 2025 reading journal. I used the Scribbles That Matter in B5 and I chose this kind of foresty green and purple combination. The Scribbles That Matter journals, at least the ones that I use, are fairly basic. They just come in one color with a separate color as like an accent color. So that is what I tend to use now instead of the Usher and Olive ones, and that's purely because I enjoy the B5 size over the A5 size. This year I will be using the Scribbles That Matter journal as well. They come in this hardcover box and I have the white and grey one this year. They also come with it's about a 3-point fine tip pen and a bookmark / ruler / guide, divider guide, and then some info about the company. So yes, that's what I enjoy using. So 2025 was the first year where I pretty much filled out every single page in my journal. There were things that I want to continue on this year, and there's things that I don't feel the need to keep, or I didn't really maintain properly this year just gone. So we'll get started. So the first couple of pages are what is usually the title page. Let's have a look. Yeah, so when it opens up, this is what this looks like in the journal. However, I don't really have I'm not using the actual bullet journal system, so I don't have a key code there, especially because I already know what I'm using in there, so I don't really need the key code anyway. And then obviously this is like the This Journal Belongs To page. So for that, I utilize that as my 2025 cover page and my 2025 reading goals. So we can go through the goals. So basically I set myself a goal to read on average 4 books a month, to read more of my own TBR than 2024 releases, to continue to use the library before buying books, to write more book reviews in my journal, essentially to use my journal more often, to read outside at least once a fortnight, because I spend so much of my spare time reading. I wanted to be able to get outside and go for walks and whatnot. To attend book clubs in real life. This is one of the only goals that I didn't actually get a chance to do. That was one because the book clubs were always on weekends, and I have a rotating roster, so I work a lot of weekends, and when there were book clubs that weren't on weekends, they weren't of books that I had read. So unfortunately I didn't get to participate in many in-person book clubs, but I definitely had a fair few online book clubs that I participated in. Then we have join in on the book clubs I pay for, so that is all of the Patreon and YouTube subscriptions that I have, where the book club is part of that perk. I wanted to make sure that I was actually using that perk, and that's because I have always had the subscriptions since they've started them, but I live mostly on the other side of the world to everyone who runs one, so I was finding that I wasn't really getting involved in the actual book club. I was just reading the book alongside everyone else. Then I had post more and make bookish friends. I haven't necessarily posted more this year, but I definitely have made bookish friends. Have a buddy read and journal it. I've marked this off, but I'm trying to recall exactly which book that was for. I have a fair few. I've journaled about every book, but anyway. Read off the backlist. So the backlist is what we'll get to soon, and it's roughly 100 books that I had on my shelves that I had for a while, or I was really interested in reading. I started it at the beginning of 2024, and I'm trying to read down those 100-ish books. Not in any particular rush, but I just wanted to make a concerted effort to actually work towards those. So I had done those, and I marked that off before I decided that I wanted to just do hard. So we've got a black box there. Read more nonfiction. So I have made it an effort to read one nonfiction on average per month, and I'm thinking as of right now I have read 12 this year, so I've kept that up. In terms of reading more nonfiction, that was in relation to the fact that the year before I had read maybe 2 or 3 nonfiction, so I wanted to read more than 2 or 3, and in my head I made myself a private goal of 1 per month, and there were a couple of months where I had to read 2 to stay on track for the 1 per month, but overall I read 12 this year. And then take part in 2025, which I am currently trying to read the 24th book on my 25 in 2025. I don't think that I will get it finished in time to be able to read the 25th book, but I feel like that's still a success because I've taken part in 25 in 2025, and I've pretty well finished all of the books on that list. So I feel like that's a success. In terms of the spread itself, I used brown craft paper in a lot of my journal this year. I basically only had a couple of stickers, which are these ones here, that I got from I think either an Etsy store or an Amazon storefront, but I wasn't really focusing on stickers this year. The kind of colouring in the background is actually tea water, and then I use my Tombow brush pens for all of the alternating highlights and the script. All of the words here, like the book pages you see, are actually pages from a book that I got from not a library sale, but like a dump thing. So basically it was books that were being chucked out. No one was interested in them, and at first I was interested in this, but it ended up staying in my donation bin for pardon me, ended up staying in my donation bin for the longest time. So I've been using it all year, and I will continue to use it all of this year to make page cutouts. So that's what those are. And then we have some washi tape along this side. I got a specific pack of washi tape to kind of keep the theme going off Amazon, and that was like florals and like foresty stuff. And then I had some washi tape from Big W, Kmart and Officeworks that I used to kind of accent it. And then when I felt like I was missing things, I would just print off images from Google and onto sticky paper and cut them out myself. So that's what those are. So then we can move on, and the first thing we have is the backlist TBR that I was talking about earlier. So instead of the index, which is normally in this section, I have made the entire index part of my backlist TBR, and it's very basic. I have the title and author, and this is, unlike my shelves, which is alphabetical by author's last name, these are alphabetical by title of the book. So I basically alphabetized them for the best part and wrote them all in, and then next to them in pencil I just double checked to make sure that I had all of the books that I had continued on from previous journals. And then I went through, and any book that I read in the 2024 iteration of my challenge, I put my star rating in pink, And then for this year, I decided to use green as my star rating. So there have been a few times where it's not the same green. That's because I was somewhere else and didn't have it available. But for the most part, I was able to use the right green. And as you can see, I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 from this list so far that I've marked off. I know that I've read a few more, so I'll go through and mark those off. But I am on track to have read more from the list this year than I did last year, so I love that. Again, we've got we've got Tombow brush pen, we've got pieces from the book, we've got, I just typed the font up in Word doc and printed it out and glued it on. We've got some washi tapes and some stickers. Very basic. Then we move on to my yearly spread. So this is one that I keep a bookmark in. We've got 2 bookmarks in this book, and I always keep one on my yearly spread and then one on whatever month I'm on. So I like to have a calendar in my book that shows the full year, and I always start my calendar weeks from Sunday and go through to Saturday. I just like the way that it looks on the page when I do that, so that's how we've done it there. For this calendar, I have color coded each day, so basically if I read on that day, it has a green mark in the color 158 from Tombow brush pens. If I didn't do any reading, then it has a beige mark in the color 992. If it was a day where I wasn't going to track whether or not I read, I put it in this kind of orangey gold tone, which is 026. So that's events and birthdays. So they're days where I have a lot on, and so there's not necessarily going to be any reading done, but I'm not going to penalize myself for not having read that day. Moving along, then we have the year in pixels, which I have not fully completed yet, as with December in this calendar. So what I do is I go through, and just like this one, I mark down. But for this one, if I haven't read it all, it's N35 or just a black. Then if I have read but it's under 50 pages that day, it's the beige 992 color. And then if I have read and it's over 50 pages, which is kind of what my goal was unofficially, then that would be that green color in 158. So for the most of the year, I have been able to read every day at least a little bit. There were a couple of months there where I didn't do a lot of reading, and that is kind of in trend with most years for me. My reading slump, it tends to fall around the end of May, start of June, sometimes August, sometimes April. So for this year, it was most of August that I had my reading slump, but for the most part, I was able to stay on track. I did add this where if I finished a book on that day, I would circle it. However, I just started to not like the way that looks, so I stopped doing that, and I don't think that I'll do that again next year. I'm not sure if I'll do the year in pixels next year. I might just leave it to the calendar, but that'll be a discussion for another day. So then we have an explanation on my monthly average rating. So this year I decided to go back to using the core pile rating structure, and for 2026, I think I'm going to move away from it again, because I found, and this is why I've stopped using it as well, that often my core pile rating structure would suffer because I already had in my head what I wanted to rate the book, and so I would just fit the core pile rating structure to make sure that I would make it to that star rating. So I was just finding that there was no point in me rating all of these different elements, characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment on a scale of 1 to 10, because I knew I needed to rate it a certain number in order to be able to get the star rating that I wanted. So I think I'm just going to stick with my star ratings and maybe like have an explanation about what I want each star to represent. But yes, this is my little explanation tip in that I have. And again, I've just used the Tombow markers. I've printed out the months in the font that I want, and then I've used stickers and washi tape and paper. Moving along, we have another yearly spread. Now this I ended up splitting into 3 different sections because I didn't do enough. It's not a Dutch door, but it's like a I can't remember what the name is, but it's like a Dutch door where the internal pages are within the single spread. So what I have done is I have books read on either side of the 2 pages. So we have books read here, but then on the inside I have bookshelf of books read and bookshelf of books bought, and they are color coded themselves. So first we'll look at this. These are my cover spreads, and I'm going to keep this moving into the new journal. I have gone from left to right on the page as you would read a book, and go down the page and then continue across the next page. So I enjoy having it all chronologically in each page and then also throughout the book. In the bookshelves, we have my read books on one shelf, and then I've copied the same shelf and done it on this side for the board. The color code here is color 126 for audiobooks, color 992 for physical books, color 026 for a mixture, so I could have read it audio and ebook, I could have read it ebook and paperback or hardback, I could have read it audio and hardback or paperback, so just all 3. It's any book that I read using multiple formats. And then color 158 as an ebook, and then N75 as a DNF. As you can see, I haven't actually put any of my DNFs in there. I decided not to track those at any point, and that's purely because I rarely have any DNFs, so there was no need for me to track them. And then in the bought section, I color coded 126 for full price books, 992 for secondhand books, so that's library sales, the Lifeline Book Fair, any sort of like bought online, like through Facebook groups, those kind of books. Then color 026 for under recommended retail price. So those are books that I've gotten on sale or used points to help get, or gotten from a shop that is selling them for less than recommended retail price. And then color 158 for books that were gifted to me, whether that's birthday, Christmas, just randomly someone has gifted me a book, or I've been sent a book from a publisher or something like that, you know? So that's that spread. Then we move into my first monthly spread. So we have January, and what I wanted to do, which I'm probably, again, not going to continue doing this, is I wanted to have a page with the full calendar on it so that I could write things in here. I ended up just tracking the time it would take me to read each book, which is something that I didn't continue later on anyway. Well, I tried to, but again, it wasn't the most accurate. And I forgot that I wanted to have somewhere where I could keep an eye on new releases. So I just did some little Dutch doors here as tip-ins to put down all the new releases that I was looking forward to. And basically I would put an X on them if I had gotten my hands on it, and I would color it black if I had read it. Yeah. Then we have the actual reading plans page for that month. So I separated it into quarters, and I left 1 quarter for book clubs and read-alongs, 1 quarter for just a general TBR that I wanted to have for that month, and 1/4 for my monthly goals. So these would also include some of my yearly goals, but a lot of them were goals specific to that month. I then left 1/4 blank, and this is where I used, I put like a quote that I loved from a book that I read that month. So this one is from the Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, and it was the circle of perfect motion of the light bringer and the dark giver, the world starter and the shadow ender, of initiation and completion. It was the symbol of the Ka Arwen. Love, 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 love that series. I'm hoping to finish it this year. So then we move into the actual journaling spreads for each month. So I split the pages into 3. I'm thinking for this year I'm going to be doing, instead of 3 per page, I'm going to be doing 10 across, no sorry, I'm going to be doing 5 across each 2-page spread, whether that's 3 and 2 or in a different format. I want to have a little bit more room per book. Even though some of the books later down the track I don't write a lot about, I feel like if I had more room, I would be more incentivized to write. So the setup for every single month has been title, series, author, format, pages or hours, and review, and then off to the side I would add the year that that book is published. On the side where the actual cover is, I had the number read for the year, the dates read, day and month, and day and month. I had underneath the core pile rating, and then the total core pile score, and then my star rating up the side. So because I'm not going to include the core pile rating this year, I'm not going to have the exact same setup, but something similar. And then, yeah, so we'll move on from there. Basically, I would just write how I feel about each book, if there was something that stood out to me, something that I want to get more in depth with this year. So here we have, I finished my January reads here, and I had 1 space left. So I used that as overflow for the next month, but it ended up being for March. But then also March continued, so I had to add some extra paper in. So not all the reads are in the exact same section as the rest of their month. Sometimes they are a couple of months beforehand, but yeah, we have some March overflow there. So then the wrap up. So we have January review, and that is monthly statistics that I have taken from the generated images from Storygraph each month, and that has how many books I've read, the pages I've read, which I've now also been able to split into hours read and pages read, the average rating for that month, my highest rated reads, average book length, average time to finish a book, fiction versus non-fiction, all of the different genres that I'm reading, all of the formats that I read in, and how I read each day. Under that, I've added the ratings collage so that I can have a quick review to see how much I've rated each book for that month. Then I have a spot where I intended to do more with this, where I would have my favorite for that month and my least favorite for that month. I wanted to be able to write a little bit about it, but I never ended up going back and doing that. So it's kind of a bare monthly review, but it is something that I'm going to work on this year. So now we'll just flip through each of the months because they're essentially the same, and I'll just point out if there is anything that I wanted to make known. Another thing that I added was just these little cutouts with the month on them so that I could easily flick through, but I found that I didn't really end up using these tabs anyway, so I'm not sure if I'll continue to use them. Here at the end of March, we have now finished our first quarter, so I've made a section for our quarter one review, and I've put some superlatives in there. So I wanted to say my favorite of the quarter, the biggest surprise of the quarter, my favorite non-fiction of the quarter, my favorite audiobook of the quarter, my favorite standalone, and my favorite series. And then we have the stats. So these I've taken from Storygraph and put them into my own spreadsheet and made my own stats from that. So my favorite book of quarter one of 2025 was We Need to Do Something by Max Booth III. The biggest surprise for me was This Skin Was Once Mine by Eric LaRocca. That was a short story collection that I knew that I would love because I love the way that he writes horror, but there were some elements in that book that hit me really hard and I wasn't expecting it. So that was a really really good surprise. My favorite non-fiction for the first quarter was Sick Houses by Layla Taylor, and this is about kind of prolific houses in horror media, but also she tied it into houses in real life and what a house means to someone and how a house was considered, a right to people, but is now utilized to kind of push capitalism and all of that stuff. And it was really, really interesting. I actually got that as a NetGalley arc from NetGalley, so I'm really impressed about how much I enjoyed that. Then we have my favorite audiobook, which was of course the Dungeon Crawler Carl book, and in general the Dungeon Crawler Carl series probably is my favorite audiobook. Then we have my favorite standalone, which again was We Need to Do Something by Max Booth III, and my favorite series was Dungeon Crawler Carl. So in the quarter one stats, I included my fiction versus non-fiction, the pace of the books that I read, the format that I read each book in, green being mixture, and then page number. So whether it was under 300, between 300 and 499, and over 500 pages. Then here we have a little picture board of all of my quarter one books read, and over the side my quarter one 5-star reads. Under here I have a section for thoughts, but I expanded on that here, and then I just also added. Okay, so it has been a few days since the clip just before this because my camera decided to stop filming. So I've taken it back to quarter one, and we'll just quickly go over quarter one. I had a little spot for my favorite show for that quarter. So we continue on, we have books read. So like this side, it's exactly the same, except that it's the next round of books that I've read. We also continued on with the read versus bought graphic here, and in this I've marked anytime I've read a book with a star that I bought. So these are all read, but any book that I bought and then read, I've marked it with a star, which is why I probably won't use this format again, because I just feel like I've already captured this information elsewhere, so I was just redoing that information. As you can see, I haven't yet printed off all of the titles. That's because we just moved house, so the printer has yet to be utilized, but I will get that done. We go into April. We have April's books. April in review. May, I was experimenting with just continuing on rather than trying to make it so that the spread was on a double page. I didn't really like it that much, so we'll see if I did it again. More May. Then because May is my birthday month, I also included like a birthday wish list / books that were gifted to me and what my rating was once I'd read them. So I've pretty much read most of the ones except for the Way of Kings series because I want to binge that, and I had way too many plans for reading and life to be able to do that. this year. So I need to finish up Monstrilio, On Wings of Blood, Fortuna Sworn, Blood Over Brighthaven, The Black Hunger, and A Sunny Place for Shady People, and then also the series. As you can see, I kind of started to get a little bit bored with doing the wrap-ups and whatnot, so they get a little less decorative as we go on. So then this is June. Finished here, and then we had some July reads continue on because I ran out of room in July, so I made sure to fit those books elsewhere. We have June in review and quarter 2 wrap up. Again, favourite, surprise, non-fiction, audiobook, standalone series and thoughts. This time, instead of the little door, I've just put my images here, fit the stats in. We have July. Things are starting to get a little more monotone now. I quickly put this flip out in just because I wanted to fit the stats, but I'd already printed them out too large, so with that. This is pretty much where I stopped tracking, or at least realized that I didn't need to track. I did only read 3 books this month, and so the other page that I had planned I cut out and just washi taped over that so that I could use the page elsewhere in my journal. Then we have September. September review. Again, September to November was when we were looking at moving, so I don't have any of my stats in here. I did have the covers for my least favorite and favorite, and I've just briefly put in information about my favorites and whatnot, but I haven't had any time to write thoughts or put any of my stats in here. And this is something that I always have available on my story graph, and usually I'll post it on my Instagram stories, so I have them somewhere, they're just not in my physical journal yet. Then we get to October, and of course you have to decorate October, so I've got some stickers from Kmart, which is like a, for anyone not in Australia, it is a big box store that just kind of sells a little bit of everything. But then I also have these designs that were drawn by Rachel, Gabby Reed's sister, for Summerween. I purchased these and printed them off. One for my Summerween readathon spread, but also so that I could use them in my journal. The spiderwebs is washi tape as well, as are the bats. So this is October. As you can see, I wasn't really filling anything out, but I do like to go through before the end of the year if I can and fill all of them out. Then I planned on doing a full spread for Empire of the Dawn, which I did finish reading, but I didn't end up utilizing this page, and I might still write something in there, but I have decided that I'm going to do a series spread in my next journal, so that's why this is kind of here as a concept page instead. Then I attended the Lifeline Book Fair. So this is all of the books that I purchased at the Lifeline Book Fair, and then I have coloured in the circle if I've already read the book that I've purchased. A lot of them were classics that I was collecting for my collection, so there's not necessarily any rush for me to read them, but I still wanted to have somewhere documented whether or not I had read them. We have the page for the October review. Then we have my Dracula spread. Again, I got to this point and I kind of lost inspiration about what I wanted to use this spread for. I reread Dracula this year. I rewatched Bram Stoker's Dracula this year. I definitely want to do something with this. I'm just not 100% sure if it's going to be a book review or a movie review or just like aesthetics. We will see. November, we haven't put in the quote here yet. Done a lot of moving this month and a lot of reading, but not a lot of creative endeavors. We have our November books. Again, we haven't written much in, but this is all stuff that I will fill out using my Goodreads and Storygraph reviews and whatnot. This is where my November review will be, and then I just popped in, I had a blank page, so I put in my Christmas shopping plans. And then we have December. I've read a lot this month, have not rarely. The only time I've ever in my journal this month was to film the flip through. So there's no tracking in the calendar, there's no filling out of these goals. I did read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I read all of the books on my TBR. I did read the Cozy Coven Book Club book. I built and organized my bookshelves for the most part. I haven't finished unhauling all of my unwanted books, so not sure yet. I'm not sure what an FLL is, but anyway. Read 4 books, definitely did. I've read outside, I read a non-fiction. I almost am one off finishing my 25 in 2025, and I did start cataloguing my books, so I would say it was a success in terms of my goals, but you know. And then we have all of the books that I've read in December. I did just finish off with Sword of Kaigen, which is a 6-star god tier book for me, so I'm very happy with that. I'm not entirely sure what if anything I'll do here in this blank area, but I have got room for the December review. My quarter 4 stats, these are just overflow on the same thread you've seen earlier, and then here I will have my end of year stats, much like the mid-year reading map, which is the next one we have. So out of the whole thing I will have 2 spare pages, and the only reason I have those 2 spare pages is because I ran out of time to be able to participate in readathons, so there's nothing to go there. My mid-year reading wrap, which I did do a reel and a TikTok on, but basically I just took the stats that I was interested in from Storygraph and I created my own graphs with them. I made note of some things that I wanted to think about within my stats, reading insights, thoughts, my ratings, some superlatives here, which was also the mid-year book tag, and then I'm not sure if you can see it there, but all of the books that I read in the first half of the year. So I will do the same thing for the second half of the year, I think, and potentially the whole year. I did purchase Locke's Library's Kindle insert that she created. This was the first version I printed, but I needed to adjust it a little bit to fit my Kindle, but I didn't want to waste the ink in my printer, so I've just stuck it in here as a memory. Speaking of Locke, we have the Cozy Coven Wicked Readathon that ran from June 13th to the 23rd this year. I had like little not Dutch doors, little, I don't know what these are called, can't remember, but for each of the prompts, just so I could go through. This was the bingo board. This was my plan for where I wanted to go on the bingo board, and then I just stuck on what I had read. Then I was planning on doing the Twilight Midnight Sun tandem read, which I still want to do, but again, I didn't end up getting it done this year, so this spread was not utilized. Something I downloaded online, I can't remember who was talking about the color journey, but I did a test to see what color reader I was. It may have been Sid. I think it was Sid. So I ended up being the purple reader. I printed out the recommendation list and I colored in any that I had already read, and I wanted to keep the rest there as a reference in case I decided to do something with that. This was going to be my Summerween spread, but I ended up getting sick, so I didn't participate in Summerween, but wanted to keep that there. And then this is the Cozy Coven Book Club spread, which I just need to fill out the last couple. We had a couple of bonus like buddy reads in a few of the months, and then I needed to cover the last 2 months as well. This was the spread for the Magical Readathon. I think that's what it's called, potentially, yes. So I had my character sheet and the order that I was in and the academy that I was going for, all of that information, the map, the prompts. I only got to March and then I stopped participating, so maybe this year I'll do it again. I just wanted somewhere to keep note of all of the NetGalley arcs that I had been reading and reviewing, so this is pretty much everything that I had to review and read this year. The only ones that I haven't finished actually is just Edelweiss, and that's because it comes out in January, so I haven't read it yet. Then this again was going to be Winterween, but oh yes, so this was Winterween. This is what I read for Winterween, but then Gabby also hosted a short and sweet readathon from Feb 14th to Feb 16th, which I was meant to read something short and sweet and pink, but I ended up just reading Pumpkin Spice and Poltergeist. Then we're going to skip these ones because they're just some personal goals in there, saving stuff and other goals, whatnot. Then we have the list of Stephen King's checklist. Let me get that in frame. So I've just put it in my book and ticked off anything that I've read or own. This was the Game of Thrones reading for the year. I am about 3/4 of the way through the Magic Mountain and halfway through East of Eden. I decided not to read the Silmarillion until I do a reread of the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Babel is still yet to be read, which is unfortunate because this is now the second year where I've had it on my list and not read it. Then I was part of the Bujo Buddies book club for a little while. I really only read 2 of the books that they had for their book club picks, and that's because I had already planned on reading them, so I ended up backing out of that one and not continuing with it because the books that were being chosen weren't exactly books that I wanted to read. Then we had the book troop. So we had the book troop picks, which I also didn't continue with it towards the end of the year. It's a pattern you'll see because I was cutting back on my spending. I was cutting back on all of the things that I was doing outside of work because I was so busy. So I haven't had a chance to do any of those, but I love all of the picks that Gabby makes. And I'm a bit sad that it's going to be a quarterly seasonal pick for 2026, but it does mean that I'm more likely to participate. We have Gavin's book club, so he does a YA, young adult, a middle grade, an Agatha Christie read along type thing, and a YA adult, a middle grade, and an Agatha Christie, and he rotates through them every other month. So that one has also been great this year, and again I stopped participating towards the end of the year. We have the Buzzword Readathon. So Kayla from Books and Lala created the Buzzword Reading Challenge and the Buzzword for this year, the Buzzword Book Cover Challenge. So I actually completed both of these, but I really disliked what I was doing with this spread, and so I just completely stopped using it. But it's something that something that I will continue with in 2026. I always look forward to this challenge. This was the book club that I was in 2024 that I found it halfway through the year, and so I put in my favorite book club selection from 2024 and just the thoughts from book club and my own thoughts about it. And then my plan was to attend it all this year, but I actually didn't make it to a single book club meetup for this year because it was always on when I was working, so that's unfortunate, but I still read quite a few of the picks, I just didn't use them. Then we have the Literally Dead Book Club. This is the first book club I ever joined and the one that I still love the most and spend the most time reading books from. So really enjoyed this book club this year and can't wait to do it again next year. Again, I think I need a different spread for it because I want to give it more attention. Then we had what I put in here was a little timetable for the Fantasy Fangirls podcast. I was listening along for the Iron Flame Fourth Wing recap, so I wanted to do Onyx Storm as well, and they were doing Spark of the Everflame, like that series, and so I wanted to get in with that as well this year, except that I only read Spark of the Everflame, and so I couldn't listen to the whole podcast because I wasn't caught up. I did, however, recently listen to their Quicksilver episodes and their Onyx Storm episodes, so I may go back and read these three so that I can listen to these episodes because they're really good to listen to. This was going to be for thoughts, but obviously I couldn't continue. And then I just had a little tip in with my subscriptions on it and what started out being my pen testing page, but I didn't continue. And then in my back pocket there was nothing in here now, but what I usually keep in here is all of the book covers that I print off. So keeping these and going to continue using them in my 2026 journal. But yes, that is my 2025 reading journal coming to an end at the end of 2025. I really enjoyed utilizing this journal this year and I can't wait to start making my new journal home because this has so much potential. So just in case you're wondering, this is how they fare. So I've opened one page in this journal and this journal I have used all year long. So we're looking not too bad in terms of wear and tear. Anyway, thank you so much guys for watching my journal flip through. A little bit of different content for you today, but I will see you again soon.